What's going on, everybody? So today we're going to talk about how to build the perfect shoulder. So first things first, you need to remember the anatomy. So the anatomy of the shoulder, that there's three heads. So you have the frontal head, which is this part that you're seeing right here. Then you have the lateral head, which is when I lift it, that's this big chunk in the middle right here. And then you have your rear head, which is this right here. So this whole thing is what makes the shoulder. So this whole head right here. So you need to understand that first, and then keep in mind that the direction that you move your arm when you're doing raises is going to work in that. So if you're doing front raises, then try and lift following this path of motion right here, right? If you wanted to work on the side, then you lift with your elbows up, always your elbow on top of your wrist. So leverage once again, and then you're pulling from right here. So you see how this is accentuated? And then lastly, you're going right here so that is used. So you're swinging it out in that motion. So you need to understand those three heads and do that. Now, when you're doing pressing, which is the first thing you want to do, you want to get all of your pressing out of the way. So that's really push compound movements that are going to utilize your tricep. They're going to utilize a piece of your chest, but mostly shoulders and your lats to stabilize and traps, all that stuff. So what you want to do is that you want to basically have your elbows out in front right here, right? And then as you're pushing back, so you see how I'm lifting the elbow into the pattern in which this grows, right? So I'm lifting the elbow out there and I'm bringing it up. So it's almost as if you're doing this. So you start with your elbows forward in front of you, and this is whether you're standing and doing a military press or you're seated. You want your elbows to come out right in front so that they rest naturally right here, so you don't see your lats. Right here you can see my lats, right? But when I tuck them in, you can't. So that's where you want to start off every movement. And then basically going up, pushing your elbows out until it goes all the way up, and then closing, finishing the movement, bringing it back down here. For Arnold presses, I see that is a mistake that people commonly make. So they'll start Arnold presses by having it here and just doing this, and it's all rotation of the wrist. They just do this, and it's just kind of opening it, and that's not the best way to do it. So basically the best way to do it is to have them rested at your side once again, and then lean a little bit forward, clutch everything, tight core, and then basically just throw them up and rotate at the shoulder joint. So you'll see a lot of people doing this and rotating at the wrist. You want to keep the wrist neutral and rotate at the shoulder joint. So this is what's rotating, this joint right here, not the wrist, not the elbows, but the shoulders, right? So that's number one, get all of your pressing out of the way. Then you're going to want to do your raises. So that's when you, incorporate your raises, frontal raises. And when doing any type of raising, a lot of people make the mistake of kind of like shrugging in and just kind of like doing this and just going right there. And that doesn't really do anything. You want basically to have as much space in your armpit, as much space as possible, to the point where your arm is kind of just hanging there like dead weight. So then you imagine the weight in your hand, and you're basically trying to, if this is the weight, I'm trying to bring it as close to the camera or as close to the wall as possible. So I'm not keeping it right here because that's engaging my traps, right? I'm letting my traps loose. I'm leaving them, my shoulder blades are just down. I'm letting it hang, and I'm just bringing it up. So it's easier to isolate this when you're doing single armed. But if you want to do double, make sure you stand firm, and then you let your shoulders kind of hang, so that you see the difference between this and that. So I let my shoulders hang, and then I'm just driving it up, pulling it up, using the shoulder to really pull it up and squeeze. So get all of your pressing out of the way, then your raises, then, after your raises, then you're going to want to do any type of finisher movement, like face pulls, for example, or shrugs if you're trying to get the top part or back here. But I'm talking about just purely with the delt. You're going to want to keep those three things in mind. So anatomy, leverage in terms of where you're turning and rotating the wrist, and the pathway in which it grows, which is kind of a bit like anatomy when you think about it. But trying to think if there's anything else, honestly. Go lighter than usual. Remember, it's about the focus. And oh yeah, so last thing is you want to train shoulders. If you really want to get them, round and have that appearance, you want to train them 3 times a week. So what I did that really got them to grow is I started doing push-pull splits. So basically on a push day, you're doing chest, right? Because you're pushing that away. You're doing shoulders, right? Because you're pushing away, or I'm like pushing that away, or I'm pushing you. Or you're doing triceps, which is also a push movement. So you're taking this and you're pushing it away from you, right? And then pull is going to be bicep, right? Because I'm pulling the weight towards me, or back, pulling the weight towards me once again. So when you do that, you focus a little bit more on chest one day, and then when you repeat the cycle, you focus a little bit more on the accessory muscles. So the thing is, on chest day, if you're working out chest, throw in some frontal raises, right? Because your chest, when you're doing chest, your frontal delt is, or your front delt is more engaged than any other part of the muscle. So you want to do that. On back days, when you're doing pulling motions, you see that this muscle, which is the rear delt, this head, is being engaged too. So you want to throw that in at the end. And then lastly, on the shoulder, on the actual day in which you hit shoulders, and you do your pressing, you want to make sure that you're really focusing on the lateral head. So basically you're doing them 3 times a week. One day specifically devoted to them, and then the other days you're kind of just throwing it in at the end of the workout, or maybe doing it throughout, supersetting, however you want to do it. Just make sure that you're hitting those 3 heads, and you're trying to keep all of those things in mind. So thanks for checking this out. I'm going to try and have more informational content. DM me, let me know what you would want to hear about. I'm always trying to, put out as much valuable content as I can to help people. So please let me know what I can do for you guys. Anyway, have a great day. Let's get this growth.